And I've noticed that if I am on a Twilight meme and I click share, the first person that always comes up now is Sasha. And it used to just be kind of based on how often I was sending stuff. So if it was someone I sent stuff to every day, they'd be number one. But now I think, and it could just be in my head, but I'm fairly confident that the algorithm's recognizing that this type of content I often share with my friends. So it's saying, yep, I'm up here ready to go, pass it on. Hi, guys, and welcome back to the ProfileTree podcast. This week, one of the things that we wanted to talk about was Instagram's new, well, we call it the create your own algorithm update. So it's basically going to be reviewing this, what it means for users, what it means for businesses, and what kind of impact it could potentially have on them. Gabby, so I suppose to kick us off, do you want to explain it in the simplest terms possible?
Yeah, so pretty much this is a feature that they started rolling out in America, I think roughly around September, October time, but it's now starting to roll out a bit more worldwide. But it's effectively Instagram handing you a simplified kind of dashboard, and it's using AI to help you kind of build your own algorithm in terms of selecting categories of content you want to see, but also excluding content that you don't want to see. But at the minute, it's only kind of focusing on Reels, but I imagine that the update is probably going to be expanded across their other kind of feeds like posts and stories. But it's a big shift from the platform because for years they have been forcing kind of recommended content on users and in a way to help you discover new content. But I think that is actually seeing a bit of kind of backlash in a way because users have become frustrated because they're kind of being recommended content they maybe have interacted with once but don't actually have any interest in. But this is now kind of giving you a bit more control in terms of what you do and what you want to see, at least at the minute, with real content.
I can definitely sympathize with this kind of idea too. Even on other platforms like YouTube, if I watch one video on a given topic, it's going to chuck 20 at me. The next time I look at my recommended and I'm like, no, that's enough.
It's so true. And I like the idea that it's kind of led by the user and it's given them more like autonomy and independence in terms of what they want to see. Obviously, we've constantly been at the mercy of algorithms and what they're kind of throwing at us, but I always feel like I'm hacking the algorithm. So, for example, if I'm like, I think I just need to see puppies today. I'll just find a puppy reel anywhere and watch it 3 times over just so that I can just start scrolling through those puppies. But it is nice to know, okay, this is, I suppose, not only this is what I want to see, but also this is what I don't want to see. Because like you're saying, there's nothing more frustrating than kind of getting content thrown at you. And it might just be stuff that you're simply not interested in, but it might also be stuff that maybe doesn't align with your values or your kind of interests or politics or things like that. So it is really, really interesting. It's an interesting move, I think, in 2025 for Instagram, especially when you still see platforms like Facebook and Twitter that are still X, sorry, that are still very much driven by the, will we say, negative engagement of users. You know, we talked about keyboard warriors in the comment section. That's still very much a thing. If anything, more so as people's opinions seem to just drift further and further apart. So I guess I think overall for users, it's going to be a largely positive impact. But what are our thoughts in terms of what this actually means for businesses? Like, do they need to kind of revisit their strategies? Do they need to think about how, firstly, I suppose, what content they're creating, but also how they're disseminating that through their platform?
Yeah, I think in a way it's almost kind of like SEO for search engines. I think now there's going to be a bit more focus on optimizing your Instagram channel and your content itself in terms of focusing, because it's, say, for example, because you're choosing categories for your algorithm, looking at, say, like whether it's your bio on your Instagram channel or the caption within your post or even the alt text that you use for, say, like your image or your real content. It's looking at using those kind of specific keywords or category keywords that are going to help your content going to come up a bit more often in their feeds. But I read in one report that they actually think it might make it a bit easier for businesses to get their content in front of the user. So say, for example, if it's a business that's maybe selling hair care products, if a user says to Instagram that I don't want to see, say, makeup related content, it might then open it up a bit of more space for that, say, maybe hair or skincare kind of related content to filter more into their feed. So maybe increasing the likelihood of your content being seen.
I could definitely see or kind of envision that you might see, the numbers go down for, total amount of views, but engagement conversion might go up because now people are seeing what they want, I suppose, is the angle that you could kind of take it from. So they're more likely to engage with it as opposed to you were getting lots of views on a given, well, in this case, reels before we go on to anything else that they'll apply it to. But, you know, but maybe people weren't engaging with it in the same way or interacting with intent.
So true. And I suppose it's like what we've been kind of trying to communicate with clients for the past couple of years is just because you don't have that many followers doesn't mean that you can't potentially perform well on social media. And vice versa, just because you have 50,000 followers does not mean that you're going to necessarily perform well on social media. So it is there it's back to it's another sort of technique to drive that engagement, isn't it?
Yeah, because definitely I think as well as our attention spans getting increasingly shorter, I think our engagement rates are. And I do really think it just becomes down to a matter of we've taken so much content on a day-to-day basis now that we're even subconsciously becoming kind of exhausted from engaging. So I think now with, say, for example, because like Instagram, say for as long as it's been around, has had a couple of different type of algorithms. Like it's had like a chronological algorithm. It did have one more focus on engagement, but I think maybe the way they're looking at it now is that if you're looking at content that you've specifically chosen to see, that's maybe more likely to increase your engagement. But also, probably their biggest kind of goal is to keep you on the platform, for as long as possible.
Mhm. Absolutely. And what like a lot of people don't realize as well as we kind of always refer to the algorithm or algorithm across different social media channels. Instagram is slightly more complex in that it actually uses a number of algorithms and it's effectively one algorithm per area of the platform. So obviously, whether it be your stories, posts, reels, things like that, it's a number of different ones working together. And it's, I suppose, basing that on, well, each user will use those different areas in a different way. So, for example, for me, stories, I would only interact with my friends and family, like the people that I follow that I actually know in my life. Whereas Reels is pure entertainment. It's like I just want to be distracted or like kill some time while I'm waiting in the dentist waiting room. So it is really interesting to see how that's continuing to develop. And one thing I even noticed, one of my friends, Sasha, like the main thing that we send each other on Instagram is Twilight memes. And I've noticed that if I am on a Twilight meme and I click share, the first person that always comes up now is Sasha. And it used to just be kind of based on how often I was sending stuff. So if it was someone that I sent stuff to every day, they'd be number one. But now I think, and it could just be in my head, but I'm fairly confident that the algorithm's recognizing that this type of content I often share with my friends. So it's saying, yep, I'm up here ready to go, pass it on. So it is incredibly interesting how complex and advanced these algorithms are.
Yeah, because like I've no, it's that kind of thing where I got sent once by a friend like a zodiac related post, and I know, sorry, but I think it was maybe actually a reel, but then I opened my explore page I think 20 minutes later and it was like maybe 80% zodiac related. I was think it was I clicked into one reel and now my entire algorithm's kind of dictated by it. So I definitely think there is something within the algorithm that can pick it up. So because like Laura, like you said, like a friend of mine, we kind of only send each other, say, travel related places we want to go, and it always seems to be when say if they've sent me something will come up in my feed and I'm sending it back, and it always just seems to be a bit of a back and forth. So I do think it can kind of hone in on that, and I think even probably that's probably a goal for it as well, because say the more time you're spending sending content, say, to people that you know within the platform, you're spending more time in it. So then it's just trying to keep you there that bit longer by always kind of referring you back to content that it knows you're most likely to engage with.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the ultimate goal for Instagram, is that it's keep people on the platform longer. We look at screen times like as if they're not high enough at the minute, but it's definitely trying to encourage that as well. One thing that in terms of what businesses consider as well, and I wanted to mention is obviously, well, number one, as always, continue to encourage engagement from your users. That's always the number one goal. But also something to just be aware of is we always talk about banned content or restricted content, and you think of things like inappropriate content or stuff that's not suitable for viewers on the platform. But another thing that they've mentioned, I think this might have been Business Insider reported on this, is Instagram can restrict content because of excessive use of automation tools. Now, obviously, we would recommend tools to clients, especially sort of time saving tools or things like Buffer or tools that are going to basically push the same content out across multiple channels. Something to be aware of if you are using those or are using those constantly is maybe have a little look at your reach within your analytics dashboard and see if you've noticed a drop. Could be because some of your content has been restricted for something like that. So it's just stuff to be aware of as well. Obviously, the metrics are there to be used, and have a look just to see what's going on as well.
I'd say as well, just as a bit of contrast from the kind of website side of things, Google's algorithm and other search engines as well, I'm kind of seeing echoes of what happened before too. Websites were one of the first to kind of capitalize on, generative content. And in the early kind of days of launch of, things like ChatGPT, we've seen some websites pushing out hundreds to thousands of blogs per day, and the algorithm hadn't adjusted at that point, and those sites did quite well for some time until Google brought down the hammer and said no more. And a lot of the websites that were very, very purposefully abusing that, no longer will you find them. They have been vanquished from the face of the earth. So I'm kind of seeing echoes of this again within, I suppose, Instagram's own kind of platform. It's the same thing. They have their own algorithmic kind of search parameters, and if they see people abusing something or pushing something too far to the limit, then yeah, it looks to be quite similar. Sometimes they'll overcompensate and they'll go a little bit hard initially. Things will usually kind of even out after a period of time, but yeah, definitely seeing echoes of what's happened before with Google.
I think one area that I find a little bit frustrating, even just thinking of like clients I've worked with, is say like where you mentioned about how like banned content. One area I think that I saw that they kind of look at in terms of content, which I think is kind of frustrating for businesses, as it looks at, say, like one of the areas of content that can because that ban is recycle content. And one thing I always kind of talk to you about, let's say with my clients, is that because, in terms of time making content, to always look at evergreen content. So I think that's going to make a little bit of impact in terms of, that pre-planning of using evergreen content, because it could mean that you are, saying if you're using the bulk of the same content, you are going to have to update it maybe even little bit slightly, just because, say, like with that ban content, it's not so much looking at your existing followers, but it's looking at your non-followers that it's restricting your content from. So especially if you are looking to grow your channel and growing your kind of following at the minute, I think is one area that a lot of businesses are struggling with, and it is very much now quality over quantity when it comes to your followers. But if that's kind of the main goal, if you're kind of using, like you said, like some of those automation tools, or if you're just recycling content, you could find that you're going to hit a little bit of a wall there in terms of that growth.
Yeah, true. And I suppose probably the trend for the past while will have been that if you are gonna try and use social media content to generate sales or leads or whatever it might be, there would have been a big focus on reels. Is okay, well, video content is number one. But what this algorithmic update might actually do is sort of push people towards using the entire range of content that you can on Instagram. So let's not just rely on reels. Let's remember that users interact with brands and pages totally differently depending on who they are, what their interests are. You could have some who maybe mainly looks at reels, but also you'll have people who are interested in posts, galleries, photos, different things. So it is really important to keep that as fresh as you can, and remember that you shouldn't just stick to one type of content. There's loads of sort of potential there.
Branching out from that idea to even outside of Instagram as well, I think it really reinforces as well that, social platforms in general, it's all rented space. The rules are changing all the time. Even with Google's algorithm, it's the exact same. So diversifying the ways that you market yourself, both within specific platforms and all platforms in general, is always going to be very key.
That's a very good point. Don't put all your, is it eggs in one basket or chickens? Don't put all your
Definitely the eggs.
don't put your chickens in that basket. Yeah. Don't rely on one thing. Absolutely, like omni-channel marketing, we talk about it a lot. Make sure that you kind of have a broad range of sort of brand awareness channels there. But from this update or any sort of recent updates, are we seeing anything change in terms of how Instagram, will we say, ranks types of engagement?
Yeah, definitely. I think moving into 2026, I think they are going to look at, so say, for example, they're going to look at different things more user focused. So they're going to look at things like your user relationship. So has that user interacted a lot with your content in the past? So then if they have, the AI is more likely to refer that content into their feeds. It's also going to look at their interests. So say, for example, it's going to look at, do they interact with content that's similar to yours that can also help your content kind of get pushed into it? But I think as well, in terms of like the post or your content itself, it's going to also going to look at the relevancy, in terms of the time you're posting, the trend and topics that are going to impact it. But in terms of like the hierarchy, a lot of businesses, I think, think you have to focus on, oh, likes are important or comments are the most important. But at the minute, where Instagram's really looking at is that, in terms of, say, what their big priority in terms of engagement is, it's actually shares, first of all. And then they're going to look at saves. If you save content, the algorithm is going to think that you're more likely to return to it. Whereas if you just like the post, you're going to like it and scroll on. And then I think the more they're also going to look at is, say, in terms, so say like the hierarchy is kind of in like three stages. So you've got the shares at the top, the saves second, and then the one at the bottom is comments. And I think that's because they are so much more focused on users. So if they think a user is engaging by adding a comment, that it's a bit more authentic. And then businesses can all push all those kind of metrics further by, say, if you get a comment, by replying to it as quickly as you can while it's still fresh. And then that's just going to trigger that engagement to then the algorithm to say this post is getting a lot more engagement than, say, another. And that's why it's then going to get pushed and promoted a bit more to, say, your non-followers.
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like it's going to develop a lot, and this is maybe just one big step towards sort of more advanced use of AI systems and how they can kind of implement them within their algorithm to hopefully make it better for users rather than just maybe making it easier for them.
I think they're also gonna, I kind of predict them, and I could be wrong, but I do think they're gonna, and it could actually be something that they're already kind of incorporating into their engagement. But say like on other platforms, so say for example like TikTok, there's certain kind of engagement metrics that it looks at that it sees as more valuable. So say for example, like where I was talking about how comments, even in terms of Instagram, is in that kind of hierarchy. On TikTok, it views comments that are 9 words plus as being more valuable. Whereas, say, if you had a comment that was a couple of emojis, it views that as being almost like spam or per value. But one of the big things they look at is staggered engagement. So, say, for example, if you had a 60-second video, if you watched it for 20 seconds and hit like, if you watch it for another 10 seconds, hit save, you watch it for another 20 and then hit maybe comment or share, because there's that staggered element of engagement, it's again going to see it as more valuable and more likely to push it out. So what I even kind of recommend for businesses, whether it's say like their own team members or even encouraging their audience, don't be afraid to even put that into captions. You would say if it was an offer, you could say make sure to save this so you come back to it. Just kind of it's almost kind of in a way changing your call to action a little bit, because you almost want to drive engagement more, because from that it's going to be like the domino effect that it's just going to help in terms of, say, like the conversions afterwards.
Yeah.
So true. Oh, go ahead, Marcus. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. I was just gonna say, yeah, we see again another one that we kind of see echoes of on other platforms, YouTube, which, typically at least half of it, lends itself to longer form content, I would say, than Reels, although there is YouTube Shorts. But you'll see that all the time, yeah, where creators on there will ask people mid-video, oh, comment down below what you want me to cover next, or if you're interested in this, or what you think about this as well. So it's kind of something you want to keep in mind with the actual creation of your content, as both a way to actively make users feel engaged, but also make the algorithm feel like you're engaged as well with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we were talking before about like it's really important to have variety in terms of where your content is. So whether that be posts, reels, stories, but also even thinking about people's tastes and interests. Like I personally know within probably half a second if I'm going to continue to watch a 10-second reel. Like I won't even invest 10 seconds. I'm like, nope, bored. Um, but there's other people who are like, no, I probably skipped stuff that is a little bit longer form. Mix that up with your content as well. So, try really short videos, try slightly longer videos, try longer videos again. Because you aren't just selling or pitching yourself to one specific customer type. And it is all about building brand awareness. So try and reach people based on what they're kind of typical habits and trends and behaviors are on platforms as well. It is definitely more difficult now than it used to be. I think things used to be a little bit more predictable in terms of people's habits, but it's changing so much that it's tough to keep on top of. But as we were saying before, like make sure to track your metrics and see how things are, but also don't feel like if something doesn't work that it's an absolute failure. You know, it could. Gabby, you've talked before about how you've seen reels maybe go out and absolutely do terribly, and then a couple of weeks later they just seem to gain traction. That's where hopefully you can take advantage of the algorithm.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think the word, say, like, whether I know obviously we're talking about Instagram, but I think that's even when you think of platforms, say, like Instagram and TikTok, that's where the importance of choosing kind of strategic hashtags come in. Because if you choose strategic hashtags, it can actually help your content get pulled back into the algorithm. So, say, a reel that you may have thought maybe didn't reach your expectations could all of a sudden kind of start reaching that kind of target audience that you're looking for. And you're definitely right in terms of adapting your content to different types of audience, because if you only ever say did long or say short form content, like say maybe like a 20-second 30-second reel, you're only maybe appealing to one side of your audience. Whereas if you're adapting and trying different content, whether that's longer videos or posts or carousels, it's just opening up those opportunities for you.
Well, guys, I suppose that's been another week looking at the news and digital. I would say, from the sounds of it, watch this space. Things probably aren't going to be the same for long, but it's definitely interesting to watch and see what it kind of, what impact it has on user habits and everything across the board. So, thank you for another great podcast episode, and we'll see you soon.